Okay, quick reminder problem. This is going to be lesson 2.8.5, but I'm doing a little bit of a review for you here because we do have a test coming up that's not going to be super easy. It's algebraic manipulation test that's coming at the end of the week, and this is just a review reminder question. So if I had this, I can tell it bounces, and I can tell what the root is by looking there. The root's 3, and it's bouncing there. So wherever it is, whatever it's doing, it's bouncing right there. I don't know if it's bouncing this way or if it's going to be bouncing on the top, but it's bouncing somehow. Okay, and I also know that it goes through -5. Now that one's not a bounce, it's a single, it's a cut through. So that one has to go through that point. The next thing I do is look at the lead coefficient. If I were to take this x squared and this x, that would mean my lead coefficient really starts with an x to the third. And that's a 1 on there. There's no like number here or here, so they're both 1s. So my lead coefficient's a 1. So that tells me that since it's positive, it must be going up on the right. And the only way to bounce then is to bounce off of this. And the only way to make this a cut through is to go down through that. Now why does that help me at all? Because I wanted things that were bigger than 0. So Miss W, tell me how to finish this problem. Okay, so where is it above the line? It is above it on both sides of the 3. But so how do I write my final answer? What do you think the answer is? Brackets, parentheses, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay, and why do they work? Ah. Changing your mind, I agree. -5 to 3, not close brackets. Why don't they work? Yeah, and then we want things bigger than 0. All right, good. Union with 3 to infinity. You are right. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, good. All right, next thing. Let's do one like we did yesterday. X squared plus 5x plus 4 all over x minus 3 x plus 7, and this is, that's too much. Just take off the x plus 7. That's just too many spots to check. Greater than or equal to 0. This one you would not want to try to graph because you're not going to know what the graph looks like. But what I do is find the important spots in a number line, test the intervals. I'll pause for a second while you give that one a try. Okay, so here's how you do this one. First thought, if you can factor it, you should. Then this becomes x plus 4, x plus 1. Then on the top, those things, let's get this straight now. Those things on the top will make the function 0. The things on the bottom that would, like you put it in and makes it a bad thing happen, they don't make it 0, they make it crash. Okay, so 3, as I put in there, is obviously something that's important, and it would make it crash. Positive 3. -1 is important, and -4 is also important. Those wouldn't make it crash. Those would make it 0. I'm putting a z above those, and above the 3, I'm putting a u for undefined. Okay, now, do zeros actually work in this case? Yes, because it says or equal to 0, so those are filled in spots. Undefined ones don't work. I like to put an empty spot there. Okay, now, where does it work? Well, I test intervals. And I'd like to hear where you guys thought it worked. Just tell me, like, in a casual way, between this and this, where do you think? From 3 to infinity only? Anybody agree with that? Does anybody think there's another spot that works? Oh, okay. Give me another one. All right. Now, does everybody agree with that? Raise your hand if you agree with that final answer. Okay, good. That's almost everybody. I'm just going to double check you on the ones that didn't work. Like 0. If I put in a 0, I put it here, here, and here. Notice the way they're going to ask your homework on your homework today, the way they're going to ask this is a little different. They're going to say, when is the function negative? Or when is the function positive? Well, that's the same thing as saying when is it bigger than 0 or when is it less than 0, right? So if I'm checking 0, this spot right here, to see whether or not it works, what I'm really checking is it positive or negative? This part makes a 4, positive, positive, And putting a 0 in there makes a negative. Positive, positive, negative. We really like it if you show your work this way. You don't have to, but it's recommended. You say, okay, this positive, positive over a negative, and that makes it negative. And that means it's not bigger than or equal to 0, so it doesn't work. Okay, awesome. I agree with you. And then I'm going to double check one of your positive spots here. -3, let's see if that really worked. -3, -3, -3, and I would get a positive, a negative, and a negative. Positive, negative over negative. Now I can say, okay, there's two negatives in this, which we cancel and make it positive. So this is positive, and so yeah, you should fill it in because it's positive and therefore bigger than 0. Okay, I'm not going to even test this. I'm going to trust you guys that this last part, like -5, would have probably made it negative, negative over negative, and that would probably make it negative, which is not bigger than 0, so you're probably right. Final answer, -4, bracket, that's a bad looking bracket, but bracket, -1, bracket, union with, parenthesis, 3 to infinity. How many feel comfortable with that? Okay, good. That's a good part of your test, and your homework for tomorrow, is to be able to handle all those kinds of skills, finding your zeros, finding your undefined spots. All right. Now let's, and if you can factor something, you definitely should. Today's has one more thing that's like important, and that's to be able to handle common denominators. What if I had 1 over x plus 5 is greater than 0? That would be incredibly, no, let's say x over x plus 5. That would be an incredibly easy one. Don't even do it. Just think about this for a second. How would it be different if I put a +3 and then said greater than 0? Now it's not a fraction. Now it's not a multiply problem either. This plus this is not a big multiply problem. So I have to somehow actually put them all together so it's like this. If it was just one big fraction, it would be fine, and we could do it like normal. If it's like this, you can't. So you got to get a common denominator. So common denominator skills, we practiced it yesterday. If there's like a 3 here, I'd put over 1 first of all to talk about what is its denominator. Its denominator is 1. So how do you make these have a common denominator? Somebody who's confident that they know how to do this, tell me. What am I going to do to make a common denominator here? Sir? All right. X plus 5, x plus 5. Why can he do that? Because he's really multiplying it by what? By 1. Okay, now I'm going to rewrite this thing. X over x plus 5 was fine. Plus 3x plus 15, notice I foiled that out, or not foiled, sorry, distributed that out, over x plus 5 is greater than 0. And now they have a common denominator. And now you can just add the tops. X plus the 3x will make 4x plus 15 all over x plus 5, greater than 0. Okay. Now it's just like any other problem. You say, what are the things that make the top 0? It's not a nice number, but I can set 4x plus 15 equal to 0 and solve it. 4x equals -15, x equals -15 fourths. I can get what makes it 0. Okay, so -15 fourths is an important thing, and so is -5. Here's -5. -15 fourths is about -16 fourths would be -4. So it's in the neighborhood of -4. So I'll just put it here, -15 fourths. Okay. And then does that spot work or not? Well, if it's going to make it 0, see, this was the little equation where I was making it 0. If it's going to make it 0, then it will not be bigger than 0. Empty spot, it's a 0. This spot is an undefined spot. It never works there. And then you just test the spots around it, and from there it's easy. Okay, it's a little bit of a pain to find something between -15 fourths and -5, but don't stress, we're not going to give you ones that are that close together. So, if you had to, you'd change this one into fourths also, and you'd say times by what to make this into fourths? 4/4. And that would make it 20/4. And so I'd say negative 17/4, for example, is between negative 15 and negative 20/4. Anyway, you could do it. It's just not fun. All right. So there is really not too much new on this worksheet. In fact, I'm just going to pull it up right now, and you may as well. Go find the worksheet. It's 2.8.5. And basically, it's mostly review here today. They're going to ask you the questions in a little different way, which freaks some people out. But other than that, it's pretty much review. I think you can read the directions well enough there. It says determine the value of x that causes the function to be, and it's either 0, undefined, positive, or negative. All I would do if I were you is make yourself the same kind of number line that you did in the past. I know this thing doesn't say greater than 0, but do you get when they're asking if it's positive, they're asking if it's greater than 0? And if they're asking if it's negative, then they're asking if it's when it's less than 0. See what I mean? So you still do it with the number line. That's probably the smart way, in my opinion. All right. So let's answer each part for number 1. When would this thing be 0 if the top was 0? What would make the top 0? If x equals, come on, give me one. One sticks out really easy. -1. Good. And the other one, you'd have to solve that. 2x minus 7 equals 0. 2x equals 7. X equals 7/2. Very good. Okay, so those are the two spots where it equals 0. When would it be undefined? What's the one thing that would crash this thing? X equals -5. Good. When would it be positive? That's the part where we want the number line. We're going to test our little intervals. We're going to say it's positive between here and here or whatever. Okay, so what are the things on the number line? Those zeros in the undefined spots. So I got to put those on my number line. I got one is at -5, one's at -1, and one's at 7/2, which is also known as 3.5, which is probably easier if you put a 3.5. Okay, then you ask yourself, okay, above those, the zeros were the -1 and the 3.5. Those were the z's, the zeros. This was the undefined spot, also an empty spot. And now, where would it be positive? Well, we can try things like, what's something bigger than 3.5? Like if I put in 4. Let's check 4. If you actually put a 4 in, remember, all I care is positive or negative. If I put a 4 in, I'll have a 4 there and there and there. That's going to make it 2 times 4 is 8 minus 7 is positive. Positive over positive. Positive, positive over positive. That's called a sign chart. Just signs, no numbers. Positive, positive over positive, of course, leads to it being positive in there, which means that it's positive between 3.5 and infinity. How about the 3.5 itself? Is it positive there? No, it's a what? It's 0 there. Okay. All right, so it's positive between 3.5 and infinity. There might be another spot where it's positive. So we better check the other intervals. Get the idea? I'm just doing your homework for you here. You'd have to check this interval. This interval's the nice one. It's got 0 in it. So I'm going to check by putting 0 into this function right here. And then I have negative, positive, positive. Negative, positive over positive. And that comes out negative. So it's negative in that zone. Ooh, that's what they wanted. They wanted negative zones too. It's negative between -1 and 3.5. See what I'm doing here? It's just a different way to ask the question, but it's the same exact things. You're finding spots where it's 0, finding spots where it's undefined, finding spots where it's positive, and finding spots where it's negative. Okay, and the number line is a very helpful tool in doing these. All right, your homework was kind of long last night for those of you that actually did your homework. And I'm going to be cutting this one down a little bit because I don't want you to have as many to do. It's not too bad. It's 15 questions, but I'm going to say You may skip number 13. We've done plenty like that. You may skip number 11. The only trick on number 11, which is right here, is that you have to set it greater than or equal to 0 or less than or equal to 0. So we're skipping it, but that's all you'd have to do is move the stuff over. So like on number 12 that we're not skipping, you just move everything to one side. Like I'm going to move this over here and that over there. And so I'm going to have x to the third minus 2x squared minus 8x is greater than 0 and then or equal to 0. And then I just do it like normal. If you can factor it, you should. So I'll factor it, and then I'll find, this is the kind that would be pretty cool if you could graph it, make a little sketch of it, find out it's like doing this kind of a deal, and then you just look for places it's bigger than or equal to 0. You know what I mean? Like that area and that area. So make a little sketch of it when you're done is my advice on 12. Okay, we're skipping 11 and 13, and let's see if there's anything else logical to skip here. Oh, this one freaks people out because it says equal to 1. What? You have to set it equal to 0 to make this stuff work, or greater than 0 or less than 0. So to get this one, you go x squared minus 7 over x squared minus x minus 6. And then I subtract 1 from both sides. Then it'll be equal to 0, right? But then I have a minus 1 equals 0. Do you get how now I can just get a common denominator? Sorry, I wrote that kind of sloppy. I can get a common denominator by putting this 1 over 1 and then multiplying the top and the bottom by something and then putting all the terms together. And then you'll have something that's all together. Once this is all together and equal to 0, you can solve it like all the other problems. Just find the zeros, find the things that crash it. Things that are on the top will make, that are in parentheses, like those little factors, will make it 0. Things that are on the bottom will make it undefined. But basically it boils down to you got to rewrite it so it's equal to 0 or greater than 0. Same one here. Got to move that 1 to the other side. Okay? It says, hint, set equal to 0. That means move the 1 to the other side. Okay? All right, I think I've given you enough advice. Shorter lesson today. You got a bunch of time to work. Use it. Use the fact that I want to help you and come up here and ask me questions and stuff during it too. So if you're stuck and you just sit there, you're really hurting yourself. You got somebody right here who wants to help.